we have a special guest joining us tonight. We are going to be moving over to League One and the championship. This is someone who's been on our show before. You recently saw him with our League One preview. It turns out almost all the things that he said in those previews have come true. It turns out the Irishman just made no ball. You know him as a Jaeger Cup Meister champion. We know him as a good friend. Eamon Zayed, how are you?
I'm good. Guys. Not sure about your words about the predictions. I've already had a couple of people reach out to me about some of those predictions. Listen, some of them are right, some of them are wrong, but that's the beauty of the game. I mean, especially with so many new teams coming into USL League One and USL Championship. It was great to see how those teams started and then how some of the teams have adapted to the league and overcome some of the challenges. And then some of them have gone the other way. But it's been really exciting and interesting. First 10 to 12 games so far in USL League One, and then obviously the championship. There's a lot to talk about as well.
Well, let's go over to the championship where we had a top of the table clash. We kind of mentioned at top of the show last week was Loudoun week, lots of Loudoun content, and they go to take on our good friends out in Charleston, where we've done a lot of content with them as well. And it ends up being a 1-1 draw. MD Myers opens up the scoring, and there was a little bit of me that was thinking, maybe Charleston is just going to show that they really are the best team in the East. But Loudoun shows fight. Neiman goes and gets the equalizer in the 67th minute, and it was not one of we're two really good teams, let's hunker down defensively and pray we don't concede. Martin and Bierman stuck to their guns. They did their thing. They did not shy down from the fight. I mean, I guess the big question here is this a possible Eastern Conference final matchup that we just saw this most recent weekend?
I'll throw my 50 cent in. I've been really, really impressed with Loudoun. I think Ryan Martin is, for me, coach of the year, definitely candidate for coach of the year so far. But yeah, I actually really enjoyed them, watching them play. I think they play an exciting kind of brand of football. I'm one of those, waiting for Loudoun to drop off maybe. They start off really well and you're kind of waiting, are they going to drop off? But no, I don't think they will. I think they're going to sustain it, to be honest. Now, will it be for me an Eastern final? I don't know. I don't think so. I'd still have Louisville and Charleston just a little bit ahead of them for me. But they've been really impressive. And if they can get a home playoff, I think that's an exceptional season.
Amen. You put it up against thing I have started this year called the L.A.D.S protocol, which is Loudoun always does this shit and always looks impressive at the beginning of the year and then drops off. So the L.A.D.S protocol is on pause for now. They've definitely shown some really good stuff. I do think, if we're being real about this performance in particular, I do think Charleston was a better side, probably deserved a little bit more. I think they were a little bit unlucky in a couple of moments. Cal Jennings will probably be asking some questions of himself in the aftermath. He had a couple of decent looks. But that being said, Loudoun, they do really well at taking their chances. And I think the one thing that I'd be concerned about if I was a Charleston fan after this one is Loudoun did find ways to stretch Charleston's back line and get in behind, which is not something that a lot of teams have been able to do. So I think Loudoun definitely found those moments to be able to expose Charleston a bit in a way that they typically don't. So I do think Charleston a bit unlucky in this one, but yeah, the L.A.D.S protocol holding off for another week because that's a good point against the best team in the East.
Charleston comes into this game having scored 17 goals in their last 6 league games, which is a ridiculous record. So if you're Loudoun, who I think a lot of the focus has been on the pretty soccer, the possession, the way they attack, this team's defensive identity is really strong this season. And in this game in particular, I thought Cole Turner and Giannis Learman were strong in central defense. It's very hard to stop what Myers and Jennings do up top. And as they've done as well as anybody has across this entire season in that regard. Yeah, Charleston had the moments where Torres or even a Nate Dos Santos on the left side found those opportunities to serve in. But I think Loudoun stuck to their principles in terms of the press, tried to play that pretty football, and they got rewarded for it in the end. And to kind of go back to Kaylor's question, I don't know if I'm bold enough to say they're better than Lou City right now, but it feels like there's a pretty firm top 3 in the East, and Loudoun is a part of it.
Farouk 7 saves, I think, too. So huge performance from Hugo Farouk.
A typical Hugo Farouk weekend, frankly.
Yeah.
You mentioned the back line. John, you and I were beating the drum preseason that if Loudoun moved away from their 3-4-3 kind of setup from last year, that defensively they were going to be horrible and that they were just going to lose all sense of stability. And boy, have they shut us up.
Yeah,
right?
Very wrong about that. Yeah.
Very wrong. I mean, I was convinced that taking the strength of their team last year, which was their defensive stability, they weren't scoring a ton, but they were defensively solid. It kept them in matches. And I thought that because they were just going to replace from within on the attacking side. And I was like, well, you didn't have anything attacking wise, and you just took away from the best part of your team. As it turns out, Ryan Martin's a smart guy and may know what he's doing. Because, if you asked me, all you're starting is Learman and Turner in the back line preseason, I'd have been very concerned about where Loudoun would be. We wouldn't be talking third. We would be talking last possibly in the league. And that shows in our preseason rankings. We had them so low. You just end up impressed. I was also looking at just some stats, and when you look at the 2 of the top 3 most passes connected and pass completed percentage, Juan David Torres and Aaron Malloy are at the top. If you just basically say a minimum amount of passes requirement, which I think was 900 passes completed, they are 2 of the top 3 players in terms of percentage. Having Juan David Torres and Aaron Malloy as in your midfield and just connecting play between those, that's just not fair. It is simply not fair for Charleston. And that's even before you get to what they do on set pieces and what MD Meyer and Cal Jennings do in open play. This Charleston team is just so much fun to watch. So how about this? Let's go over to the West, where we can talk about the hottest team in the USL, which is Phoenix Rising. Yes, Orange County has been sputtering this year, but from the very beginning, I said I was a Pa-Modou Kah truther, and these last few matches have shown that. This has been their longest winning streak since the league historic, what was it, 22 matches in a row unbeaten or winning streak. This is their longest winning streak since then. Phoenix Rising did not have all the talent on paper preseason. We thought Orange County did. Phoenix Rising just chewed them up and spit them out 3-1 to the Rising.
I mean, kind of going to something that Eamon's been underlying today, that ability for a coach to really galvanize the players, get them motivated, and get them buying in. Pa-Modou Kah has done an unbelievable job of having those players raring to go every single weekend. The execution isn't always perfect. They took some time to figure out the ideas side of things, but you see the way that they close down in the midfield, they get out in transition. Man, Phoenix is just fun to watch because there is that sense of collective that they bring to the table. Even in this game where it's Formella playing at striker, which really isn't their first choice, they've got teenage Cyrus Cole on the wing. You don't miss a beat because you're executing like that. You're taking advantage of the fact that Orange County has a little bit less of a physical midfield. Everything just kind of played into Phoenix's hands because of that setup, because of that trust. So really impressed with everything they're doing.
Yeah, it's funny, like, you know, I go back to the coaches, and again, a new coach into the USL. Yeah, like, he's been in the States. He knows soccer in the States. Obviously coming from Charlotte, but again, trying to figure it out. And again, it's one of the things I think it was my second year in USL League One as a coach. I was all about the result, and it was in 2022, and in 2023 I kind of changed my mindset to the process. And when I think last year, obviously, the Switchbacks obviously went on to win it, but they started off, I think they lost the first 6. They got off to a horrendous start, but then they figured it out, and again, the process with James Chambers, they bought into, and they ended up winning it. And when I think of Phoenix, it kind of reminds me a little bit of it, like, because they started off really, really poor, and I was actually worried. I remember looking at them going, geez, like they could be in trouble here. Like, and again, only the first, I don't know, 5-6 games or so, but they really bought into, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce the coach's name. I know it's Papa, and we'll just leave it at that. But they really bought into what he's trying to do. And even when there was a couple of games there before they went on their recent run, there was games where they were leading and then conceding late and kind of giving up points late on. And that they seem to have corrected as well. And now they're on this, obviously, run of form, which is their hottest in a while. But no, I think somebody put in a comment there about them being a contender. Again, the process, that they continue along that process and get stronger and stronger. Yeah, 100%. They could be a contender for the West come the end of the season, and definitely in playoffs, because I wouldn't at the moment. And again, it's so early in the season, but I'm worried about a team. I always look at a team and a coach and go, will they figure it out? And which way will it go? Will it go like that? And not so well, and a coach gets sacked and they don't make playoffs, or will it go like that? And for me, Phoenix Rising are going like that, and I don't see that changing. So I could easily see them doing some damage come the end of the season and the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, I think like the makeup of this team, or at least like the team that starts game to game, it does feel like they change a lot. And I know, given the comments are like they have had some injuries, they've obviously rotated in terms of guys starting from the bench. You know, we have Quajo on the bench, like comes off the bench in this one. Charlie Dennis comes off the bench, which not half bad to have a guy like Charlie Dennis, you know, coming off the bench. But I think there is something to that in maybe not being as settled of a side that still gives me that like uneasy feeling of like how sustainable is what's going on in Phoenix. But it also, on the, you know, if you look at it on the more optimistic side, it's like, look, they've handled all of these like enforced changes really well, and they've really weathered the storm in a lot of ways and come through it with flying colors. So I think all in all, like, obviously from the questions that we're getting asked of Pa-Modou Kah, like not that long ago, I do think like they have come through well. That being said, in this game, it is worth remembering that Phoenix, 6 players were booked out of their 11. So it is a quite like they definitely don't hide the fact that they're going to play physical. They're going to break up how other teams are playing. And I think in that way, you know, they did effectively limit Orange County, but yeah, I think the goals too sort of, you know, they get it in the mixer and like it works. But yeah, all in all, really great results for Phoenix. This in particular, I think it was good for them to just keep the run going. And I think if they can settle this side a little bit and get some consistent, like healthy 11s just game after game, I think they can definitely establish themselves as a solid playoff team.
I think to that point, Phil, I remember when again, Papa, I'm just going to say that when he got the job, I know people that have worked with him, and he's an intense character. Like somebody used the word crazy when they were describing him. I don't think he's crazy. I just think he's intense. He's passionate, and I think what happens sometimes is you'll go in and he'll demand so much from his players, and you either go along with it or you don't. You sink or you swim, and that also has an effect, I do think, on injuries, because I'm assuming he demands a lot in training, and maybe it's a shock to some of the players. Maybe they're not used to that, and if they're not, they can easily get injured, maybe, again, I don't know, I'm not there, but that could be one of the reasons why there are some injuries, because he demands so much in training, and maybe he wants to, because he is an intense character and an intense coach. Maybe he demands as much as he does in training as he does in games. But what will happen is, as I said, players, that you'll either sink or you swim. You'll get on board or you won't. And if he has enough players getting on board, and then players that seeing other players getting on board and producing the goods and they're winning games, I do think that is a recipe for success. Again, it's one of those, it goes that way or that way or that way. And I think it looks like it's going that way. And I'm assuming that's why, because he is an intense character. Yellow cards, yeah, because he's probably kind of, players are looking at him and they're intense as well in games, and sometimes that happens. But no, I think there's a recipe for success there, to be honest.
There's a couple questions in the chat, and we'll get to those before we wrap up. But I mean, we're talking a lot about, having players play for a coach and truly, buy into what, he's an intense guy. You mentioned the cards, you mentioned kind of the injuries and maybe what happens at those trainings. John, you said last week, your first comment was you would run through a brick wall for him, right? And I've kind of felt the same way this most recent weekend, and talking to Mark Briggs after the 1-0 loss to Indy 11, and just the intensity that they bring and just kind of the way that they speak. There are coaches that absolutely just make you do that. But John, I mean, the very first words you said was that you would run through a brick wall and do anything for Pa-Modou Kah at this point.
Yeah, I mean, 2 weeks back at this point, I was lucky enough to be there at the Phoenix game and to meet him. And I mean, he's somebody who has that energy when he walks into a room. Like, he genuinely is the real article. Like, that's intensity personified. But that's part of the deal. Like, Phoenix wanted a coach who brought that kind of personality to the mix. They felt like they lacked that for a couple of seasons. So yeah, I think he fits the vibe they're going for. And I'm excited to see how they keep progressing throughout this year.
So two quick questions. One, what did you guys think of the Phoenix most recent signing of Emers? Sorry. He comes over, just the Belgian. He comes over from Romanian Liga's one side. I got to be honest, I don't watch the Romanian league that much, but his CV looks very impressive. So it's clearly a talent. So I assume he's decent.
The people around Phoenix think he is going to be one of the better midfielders in the league. Like, the expectations couldn't be higher. There's somebody where they looked at the numbers in terms of the dribbling, the ball progression. They think he's going to be a number 8 when all is said and done. He came on in this match and kind of played the left wing a little bit, so he's got some of that versatility. I'm not saying either way if he's going to be great. We've seen players with the big numbers overseas fail in the USL before, but certainly the hype in Phoenix is real.
And then we kind of talked about it last week, but Phil Labers gets his first match with the Roots. Phil, you got to see this one in the most thrilling 0-0 draw of all time. Really, Phil, did you notice any difference between Glinton's last game and Phil Labers' first match in terms of tactical approach or just kind of style?
I mean, I think he made a little bit of a statement in terms of some of the players that he started and maybe sending a message to some of the players that he didn't start. Jurgen Damm is on the bench to start this one, which obviously there's probably some pressure there when you've got a big name. But I think all in all, it was funny because in the Seriously Loco preview for this one, I was like, I don't know if Phil Halper will play a back 3, but Oakland Roots are a back 3 team, so I think he'll play a back 3, and sure enough, he did. 3-4-3, just as we have come to know from Roots over the last couple of years. So I think there's a little bit of Phil Halper getting his feet under him with the personnel that he's got. But it was a bit of a shakeup, I guess, from what you'd expect. Some of the names that we've gotten used to seeing over the last couple of years in Oakland, starting from the bench. I was impressed with the fact that I think they made Locomotive look, they got them out of shape like pretty early on and got them into some tough set piece situations, which I think was sort of the goal. They struggled with Locomotive's press early, but they were able to, I think, like effectively sort of bypass it and then wore Locomotive down in a weird way. Locomotive looked really, really leggy. By about 60 minutes, it was just like Moreno looked like he could barely run. I don't know what was going on, to be honest. They haven't like played a lot of games or anything like that, but El Paso just really looked leggy. And I do think it had something to do with the fact that Oakland was stretching the play, using the whole width of the pitch. They really like got the ball into wide areas frequently. I thought that Locomotive would take more advantage of their numerical advantage in midfield. I thought like when you're playing against a 3-4-3, the one advantage you have in a 4-3-3 is that you've got three central midfielders in there who can really like play through those other two and keep the other team from playing through the center. And Tyler Gibson, I think in particular, impressed me just with the amount of work that he was doing for Oakland and the amount of ground that he was covering and not making it feel like they were outnumbered in the center of the park there. So all that being said, I think, decent enough start for Feilhaber to get the point. I would say they were kind of like hoping more than, it wasn't like a ton of like great chance creation or anything like that, but they did limit Locomotive, who's been scoring a lot of goals and is maybe, I guess, those have been drying up recently if you're not named Andy Cabrera. So yeah, a tough night out for Locomotive, but Feilhaber, I think, decent enough start given especially Root's form, like just getting a point and having a solid enough performance is probably a good enough way to get going.
Yeah, I'll say Kaylor to jump in. My look. So I've been really unimpressed with Oakland so far this year. I think they've been really poor. They were so poor against Spokane in the Jägermeister Cup. It was Spokane. I wouldn't even say it was Spokane's best game, but it looked quite comfortable for them. I've been really upset. I've just been really disappointed with Oakland, shall I say. I'll say this, it was a strange one for me. Again, I'm looking at it from a different point of view. I'm looking at, they announced that they're, they obviously, it was very sudden. They announced Gavin Clinton's gone. They're bringing in Benny, all in the space of a couple of hours, I think. So they obviously thought, they obviously had that already in their mind that they were going to do this. It was already pre-planned. My issue with it is that they announced that it was till the end of the season. Now, look, I have no problem with somebody taking over till the end of the season. It's the announcement, because for me, that sends a message to the players that they're not quite sure on this guy. They're only giving him till the end of the season. And for me, again, I'm going along with coaching and the psychology of trying to get your players to buy in and play for you. That's dangerous, because players now, if things don't go well, they don't get some, the results don't pick up. Players know that, right? Well, this guy's not going to be here anyway next season, so I don't really have to impress him. And for me, that's a dangerous game to play, because you want to go in as a coach and make an impact, and you want to have that authority, and you don't want to scare players, but Phil, you mentioned that with the changes in the weekend, maybe he was giving a couple of players a kick up the arse and a little bit of reality. But again, those players might be thinking, well, you mightn't even be here next year, so that's dangerous. I don't like that. I think that's really tough for a coach to go in till the end of the season, especially when it's announced till the end of the season, and really kind of pick those players up and get them playing to their standard and what's expected. So I'd be worried for Oakland. Again, I don't know too much about Benny as a coach and how he'll do, but I think Oakland are going to struggle, to be honest. I don't see any upturn in results. Not for me.
Well, and speaking to the confidence point, this is Oakland's fifth coach in 5 years, I think. Like, of course it's a short leash. These players don't believe that anybody on that sideline is going to stay there. So why do they respect him? Why do they buy into the ideas? And even I know Feelhaber in his public statements has been saying it's going to take a couple weeks to really move on from the old system. But this, for my money, was basically identical to the struggles we've seen, the lack of energy we've seen. Really, the only change was moving Hackshaw out to the left of the back line and getting Bravo in the middle. But even then, Bravo came off at halftime because Feelhaber didn't trust the idea. It was a hesitant start for sure. I'm not saying he's not going to be successful, but I certainly wanted to see a bit more.
I guess there's a couple of ways to look at this. For me, Eamon, if you're going in somewhere as a coach and you know that they go through coaches 5 and 5 years, how much would that worry you about your own longevity there?
It would, but again, that would be prior to taking the job. If I've accepted the job and I'm going in to take it, well, then I've accepted that's the way the club is. Obviously, in the back of your mind, you're going to be worried about that. And also, look, coaches speak to each other. They let each other know in terms of clubs and how things are in the background. But it's obviously not a good thing. But I don't know. For me, if I went into a club like Oakland, knowing that they've changed coaches relatively, quick, I definitely wouldn't want that to show and wouldn't want that to play in my mind. I'd want to go in with the mindset, definitely towards the players that I'm here. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I'm here, and this is we're going to change things because clearly things are not working. For whatever reason, things are going to change, and I'd want to go in with that stance. And the players, you're either getting on board or you're not. Again, because they're not my players. I didn't sign those players. Somebody else did. So it's kind of a clean slate, a fresh start. But you want to go in and you want those players to buy into what you're trying to do. I'm assuming, you obviously Birmingham fan over there, and Mark Briggs, fantastic coach, fantastic signing. And I know he's going to change Birmingham's fortunes because he's just too good of a coach not to. But again, he had he's I don't know how long he's got, but he's got longer than definitely till the end of the season. And I know what he's like, and I saw his comments after the game the other day, and it's basically sending a message to the players, like it's, you need to get on board of what we're trying to do here or not. You can always leave, and in time I'll replace you. But how can someone like Benny go into Oakland and say, well, if you don't get on board, we're going to replace you? Well, he mightn't even be here to replace them. So that is a worry. That would be a worry, but he's taken the position. He's obviously full confidence in what he can do, and he can change those fortunes around. As a coach, I wouldn't like it. But if I've accepted the role, that's gone. That's the back of my mind. I'm going in, 100% trying to change things.